Before we get started, let's go through some basic safety precautions. Be sure to read and fully understand the installation, operating, and maintenance instructions found in the operator's manual for this piece of equipment. Always plug the machine into a grounded outlet to prevent electrical shock to personnel. Never immerse the equipment in water. Do not pour water or any other liquids into the spinner head. Do not use excessive water for cleaning. Remember to always unplug the machine before servicing and cleaning. Operator must keep hands and face clear of the floss head to avoid possible injury. Use only gold medal floss sugar and gold medal cotton candy cones. Keep all spectators at a reasonable distance and use a floss bubble for added customer protection. Do not overfill the spinner head with floss sugar, and do not fill the spinner head while it is rotating. Now let's get started. The supplies we will be using to make cotton candy will be gold medal floss sugar and gold medal cotton candy cones. Unscrew the lockdown screws to release the spinner head into the float position. Next, install the whirl grip stabilizer and clips to the inside of the aluminum floss pan, making sure that adequate spacing is allowed between each clip as you work your way around the pan. When finished, place the floss pan with the stabilizer kit on the cotton candy machine and put the double bubble in place on top of the pan. Now it is time to fill the spinner head with floss sugar. Fill approximately 90% full or just below the screws located on the top of the spinner head. Give the spinner head a quick turn counterclockwise to level out the floss sugar. Be careful not to overfill and never add floss sugar when the spinner head is rotating. To protect your eyes from flying floss sugar, always use protective eyewear. Be certain to adjust the two leather floaters on the top of the spinner head before operating. Give each leather floater a twist so the leading edge of the floater is pointed downward in the direction the spinner head rotates, which is counterclockwise. Properly adjusted floaters will allow airflow in the pan, provide more lift to the floss, and it will collect higher on the outside wall of the pan. Your cotton candy machine comes equipped with two switches. The power switch is located on the right side of the cabinet, and a candy switch located on the front of the cabinet. The power switch supplies power to the machine without turning on any components. It also acts as an emergency cutoff switch if needed. By turning the power switch to the off position, it will immediately cut off the motor and heat to the spinner head. The power switch can remain in the on position when in use and throughout the day, but remember to turn it off at the end of the day or when the machine is not in use. Note: never use the main power switch to stop the machine between batches to refill. That is what the candy switch is utilized for. The candy switch turns both the motor and heat cycles on and off. When the candy switch is turned to the on position, the motor begins to rotate and the heat element begins to heat. When the candy switch is turned off, the heat element is turned off right away, but the motor will continue to rotate, entering into a cooling cycle for approximately 45 seconds. You will notice the auto cooling light on the front of the cabinet illuminate during this cycle. After 45 seconds, the motor will shut off automatically. This cooling cycle is required between batches or when refilling the machine. It allows the heat element to properly cool down. Otherwise, the floss sugar would melt inside the spinner head and eventually burn. When ready to start making floss, turn the main power switch to the on position. Then turn the candy switch to the on position. The motor will begin to rotate and the heat element will begin to heat up. After about 45 seconds, the machine will start to produce cotton candy. There are operating tips located on the front of the machine as well for your review. Once the machine is producing product, you will want to let a nice amount of floss accumulate in the pan. When you are ready to start removing the floss, take your floss cone and insert it under the web of floss and pull the floss completely out of the pan area. Give the cone a twirl to form the cone-shaped serving of cotton candy and place in the cone holder or serve immediately to your guests. When the spinner head is empty and you need to refill, or when you are done making cotton candy, turn the candy switch on the front to the off position. Remember, the heat will be shut off immediately and the spinner head will enter into its automatic cool-down cycle for approximately 45 seconds. Once the motor stops spinning, it is safe to refill the spinner head and continue making floss by turning the candy switch back to the on position, or simply leave the machine in the off position until the next batch is needed. It's always a good idea to try and use up all remaining floss sugar in the spinner head before end of day. At close, the candy switch should be turned to the off position and the power switch should be switched off as well.
On a daily basis, remove the floss pan, whirl grip, and floss bubble. These are the only components that you can take to the sink to clean. With the machine unplugged, cool, and off, please use a damp rag to wipe off any excess sugar residue. The machine is not to be exposed to water at any time. This could void the warranty, damage the machine, and cause electrical shock. On a monthly basis, we perform some additional maintenance. We need to remove the band and clean it. First step is to make sure the machine is off, cool, and unplugged. Remove the 4 spinner cap screws in a crisscross manner. Lift this off, save for future use. Next step is to remove the plastic acorn nut. Sometimes, after a machine has been in use, the acorn nut, the adjacent metal nut, and the jack screw will come out as one assembly. This is fine. Save these parts for reinstallation later. Remove the plastic terminal guard. At this point, note the location and orientation of the heat element. Please remove the 2 terminal screws. Please note, one wire goes to one copper strip, the other wire from the heat element goes to the other copper strip. Remove the band assembly as a unit. This will be installed later. At this point, remove any sugar buildup from the upper spinner head. No further disassembly is required. Now the band assembly can be washed off with warm water. Protect the wire leads. Do not allow the wire leads to get wet. Do not place the band assembly in a dishwasher. Do not submerge the band assembly. This will void the warranty, possibly cause electrical shock and permanent damage to the machine. Direct the stream of warm water into the turns of the heat element. This may need to be repeated several times to dislodge any sugar buildup. Constantly protect the wire leads. Keep the wire leads out of water. Do not let them become soaked. Dry it off immediately if they do become soaked. Shake the band assembly off and let sit overnight to air dry. There is a lip on the upper spinner head that will engage or seat the band assembly. This is incorrect, this is incorrect, this is correct. Please make sure that the band is seated properly on the upper spinner head. At this time, reconnect the wires to the heat element. Please note, only one wire to the heat element is connected to each copper strip. The machine will not function or operate if the wires are connected to the same copper strip. Please note a 1/4 of an inch clearance between the heat element and the plastic screw standoffs. Install the plastic terminal guard. There's a top and a bottom side. The bottom side of this terminal guard has 2 recesses. Reinstall the jack screw and the metal serrated flange nut. Position the terminal guard such that the copper terminals are fully covered to prevent accidental contact with those during use. Reinstall the nylon acorn nut on top of the jack screw. This will prevent sugar from building up inside the Allen wrench socket. Reinstall the spinner cap. The spinner cap also has a lip on it that will engage the top of the band assembly. This part must snap in place, and please note the fit. It should fit very nicely and concentrically. At this point, start tightening the screws. Do not use a pneumatic or an impact screwdriver to perform this. Perform this by hand in a crisscross manner. It may require you to crisscross 3 to 4 times to make sure that everything is evenly tightened. Over tightening may damage the spinner cap. We do not want to over tighten, but it also must be tight enough to keep everything together during operation. Check that your leather floaters are intact in good condition. Twist as described earlier. Make sure that the band is concentric with the cap and the upper spinner head. Also note the word top on the top of the band there. That must be located on the top portion of the band. If that's not correct, disassemble the spinner head and reassemble correctly.